So, the lecture titled Violent Delights Have Violent Ends really grabs you, doesn't it? It's like it immediately makes you think of the inherent dangers in power plays and war, right?
Right? Absolutely. It's a provocative title that sets the tone. What did you make of Mearsheimer's take on the dynamics of war and power?
Well, John Mearsheimer, being one of the most influential and some would say controversial international relations scholars, uses this lecture to delve deep into how violence in geopolitical strategies leads to even more destructive outcomes.
Yeah, exactly. Right, and he's not shy about taking on heavy topics like Israel, Iran, and even touching on China's influence. It's a mix of historical context and modern geopolitics.
Yep, and his approach of framing violent actions as inevitably leading to violent repercussions is kind of like warning us that when you try to play with fire, you're bound to get burned.
Very true. I mean, it's almost poetic, but also brutally realistic. He exposes that same pattern over and over in history, right?
Absolutely. And he also brings in a lot of historical examples. Think about how empires overextended themselves and, well, met their downfall. It's like he says, violent delights always, eventually, lead to violent ends.
Yeah, I get that. But don't you think there might be an argument that his perspective is a bit too deterministic? I mean, can we really say that every aggressive act must end in inevitable devastation?
That's a fair question. I mean, it's a bold, almost unyielding perspective. He does seem to embrace a kind of fatalism where power struggles, no matter how carefully managed, inevitably spiral into chaos.
Right, I see what you're saying. So, then, if power moves and violent acts lead to more violence, does that leave any room for diplomacy or peaceful resolution according to his view?
Well, Mearsheimer does acknowledge the complexity of international relations. It's like he pushes us to consider that while diplomacy exists, it's often undermined by the relentless pursuit of power. His view is that the structural forces in global politics, like security dilemmas, can make peaceful options seem almost secondary.
That's interesting. And I guess that ties back to the whole notion of violence breeds violence. It's a dangerous cycle once you're in it.
Exactly, exactly. It's like once you start a cycle of aggressive moves, it's nearly impossible to break free. It's reminiscent of that domino effect we sometimes see in history.
Yeah. And speaking of cycles, I noticed he also touches on current issues like sanctions, war zones, and even some hints at future conflicts. Maybe even a nod to how recent world events have unfolded.
Right. He definitely uses hashtags like Chen Israel, Chen in Iran, and even Chen China to pin down the present moment in his analysis. It shows that his theories are not just academic musings. They have a real-world punch, connecting historical trends to the very current geopolitical landscape.
Yeah, that's spot on. You know, one thing that I keep wondering is, does his argument risk oversimplifying the conflicts by attributing them solely to power struggles? Isn't there a danger of neglecting more nuanced social and economic factors?
That's a very good point. I mean, while his argument is sharp and provocative, it does sometimes come across as a bit reductionist. It kind of puts all the blame on a fixed pattern of aggression. I'd say, though, that's part of the controversy around his work. Some critics argue that it doesn't fully account for, softer variables like economic interdependency or cultural shifts.
I understand. So, in that sense, couldn't his approach potentially overlook the possibility that sometimes these violent patterns can be disrupted by unexpected economic changes, or say, a surge in international cooperation?
Yes, exactly. And that's where I think his critics have a point. While he gives us this clear-cut narrative of power's relentless pursuit, there are layers of complexity in modern international relations, layers that sometimes steer conflicts off their predicted course. It's like predicting weather with just temperature and pressure, completely ignoring other
Right,
nuances.
I see what you mean. And speaking of modern international relations, I was struck by how his lecture, despite coming from a perspective that's deeply rooted in historical patterns, resonates with today's global tensions. It almost feels like he's warning us about the future as much as he's analyzing the past.
Absolutely. It's as if his work is a cautionary tale, a reminder that history can, in many ways, be a blueprint for what's to come. The title itself is, well, sort of prophetic in that regard.
Very prophetic. Do you think that also plays into the way we view current events, where we sometimes interpret every geopolitical move as a step towards some inevitable violent conclusion?
Yeah, it almost becomes a self fulfilling prophecy. People might start acting with the expectation that outcomes are predetermined by these violent cycles. It's like they get locked into a mindset where every power play is seen as a precursor to
Yeah, that's a
disaster.
chilling thought. And then there's the impact of his ideas on policymaking circles. I imagine that, regardless of whether one agrees with him fully or not, his insistence on the link between power and violence forces policymakers to, well, take a hard look at their strategies.
Definitely. His work makes you question, what if our current system, with its myriad interests and power struggles, is just paving the way for inevitable conflict? It's like trying to steer a massive ship in a storm. You might think every turn is the right one, but the conditions might just be too overpowering.
Sort of a dangerous game. I love that analogy, like trying to control nature when the forces are just too vast and overwhelming.
Exactly. And while his lens may sometimes seem too narrow, it undeniably challenges us to think big about the structural elements that propel nations toward inevitable conflict.
Yes, for sure. Now, one other thing I noticed is that the lecture's online presentation itself, with all the YouTube metadata and hashtags, sort of reflects our digital age where information is consumed rapidly. Do you think that format adds another layer to how his ideas are received?
Oh, absolutely. The digital format, with its quick hit tags like WW2, WWW3, and even Toilet Power, almost turns his lecture into a viral moment. It's like each tag is a little hint inviting viewers to dive into these complex topics in bite sized pieces, even though the subjects themselves are anything but simple.
It's interesting how a traditionally academic lecture now sits right next to those flashier, shorter clips online. Do you think that diminishes the depth of his argument, or does it work to his advantage in reaching a broader audience?
I'd say it's a double edged sword. On one hand, the brevity and high engagement of online platforms might oversimplify his ideas. But on the other hand, it definitely expands the reach of his robust analysis. It makes the content accessible, even if sometimes it risks
I get
losing
that.
some of that nuance.
Right? It's a trade off. Now, shifting gears a bit, for a moment, let's think about the lecture's title itself. Do you agree with the notion that violent delights inevitably lead to violent ends? Or is that more of a rhetorical flourish to grab attention?
That's an excellent question. I mean, it's like, on one level, it's a catchy phrase that encapsulates a real, observable cycle in human conflicts. But taken literally, it might be a bit of an oversimplification. Not every burst of aggression absolutely results in, well, catastrophe, because there are moments of restraint and diplomacy too.
Yeah, true. Exactly. And it invites criticism like, does it push us into a fatalistic view where we ignore the potential for change or peaceful resolution?
True. And that's where I respectfully push back on that notion a bit. While the phrase is dramatic, it's meant more as a caution than a prediction. It challenges us to consider the consequences of power-hungry decisions without necessarily declaring them as
That
the
makes
only
sense.
outcome.
So, in essence, his lecture becomes a starting point, a conversation starter about the nature of conflict, rather than a definitive blueprint for all outcomes in international relations.
Exactly. It's provocative, designed to stir debate and get policymakers, scholars, and even the general public to re-examine what drives violent conflicts.
Right, absolutely. And isn't that what good scholarship does? Challenge conventional wisdom and make us think deeper about things we often take for granted.
Yes, indeed. And despite some valid critiques of his approach, Mearsheimer's ideas compel us to face the harsh realities of power politics head on. It's like he's shining a light into the dark corners of international relations, urging us not to ignore the potential for, well, catastrophic outcomes.
Definitely a wake-up call. It's fascinating how, even with all the controversies and debates surrounding his perspectives, his work remains influential and relevant today.
Absolutely. His influence, controversial as it may be, ensures that these topics remain at the forefront of discussions about war, power, and the future of global conflict.
Yeah, very much so. So, Wrapping up, would you say the lecture ultimately serves as both a critique of current geopolitical strategies and a warning about the potential dangers that lie ahead?
That's a great way to put it. It's both a mirror reflecting the violent cycles of the past and a window into what might be if we're not careful. It pushes us to ask hard questions about power, responsibility, and the cost of conflict.
Couldn't agree more. And while we might debate the extent of his conclusions, his lecture definitely adds a valuable perspective on the interplay between violent actions and their inevitable consequences in global politics.
Exactly. It's a thought provoking piece that continues to spark debate and hopefully inspires smarter, more cautious policy decisions. Thanks for this deep dive. It's been quite a ride exploring these ideas.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks a lot.